Jake Harlan had been riding across the Arizona desert for days. He was a quiet cowboy, the kind who didn't make trouble and didn't look for it either. He carried only what he needed: a worn saddlebag, a tin cup, a rolled-up blanket, and a heart that had grown used to long, lonely miles. That morning the sun came up hot and bright, painting the desert in colors of gold and red. Jake wiped the sweat from his forehead and kept moving, hoping to find a bit of shade before the heat grew worse. He wasn't traveling to any town in particular. He just wanted space to think. Life in the cattle towns had grown noisy and crowded. People talked too much, argued too much, and expected too much. Out here, the world was simple. The wind spoke quietly, the sky stretched forever, and a man could feel small in a peaceful way. Jake liked that. As he rode along, he noticed a strange shape near a group of rocks up ahead. At first he thought it was a coyote or a lost blanket someone had dropped, but when he got closer, he realized it was something else, someone small and still. Jake pulled his horse to a stop and leaned forward, trying to see better. There, lying partly behind a big boulder, was a little girl. She looked exhausted, her dark hair tangled, her clothes dusty, and her face pale from the heat. Jake stepped off his horse and approached slowly so he wouldn't scare her. The girl opened her eyes a little, watching him with both fear and hope mixed together. Jake knelt beside her and set his hat gently on the ground. "Easy now," he said softly. "You look mighty tired. I won't hurt you. I just want to help." And she didn't speak at first. Her lips were dry, and her hands trembled as she tried to push herself up. Jake took his water canteen and held it out to her. She hesitated, then reached for it with shaking fingers. He guided it carefully so she could drink without spilling. She took small sips at first, then a little more as her strength returned. When she handed the canteen back, Jake gave her a small piece of jerky from his pack. It wasn't much, but it was something. The girl nibbled on it, watching him with large, thoughtful eyes. After a moment she whispered a word, something in her own Apache language. Jake didn't understand it, but the tone sounded grateful. "Looks like you've been out here a while," he said gently. "Where's your family?" "Kut." She pointed toward the distant cliffs, far beyond where the desert met the sky. Jake couldn't tell how long she'd been separated from them, but he knew the desert wasn't friendly to anyone traveling alone, especially a child. He looked around. The land was quiet and still, nothing but wide stretches of sand and scrub plants. Whoever she belonged to wasn't anywhere in sight. He knew he couldn't just leave her there. The sun alone would be too hard on her, and she was far too young to make the journey alone. "All right," he said, offering her his hand. "Let's get you some shade." He brought her to a nearby mesquite tree, the only bit of cover for a mile. He settled her there, letting her rest while he checked for any sign of her family. He walked a small circle around the area, looking for tracks or anything that might explain how she ended up alone. But all he found were faint footprints in the dust, half covered by wind. It seemed she had wandered far. The girl watched him the whole time, trusting him more with every moment. She didn't speak much, but every now and then she'd point to his horse or his gear, curiosity shining in her eyes. Jake smiled a little each time. He wasn't used to company, but the quiet presence of the little girl didn't bother him at all. In fact, it made the desert feel less empty. As the afternoon grew cooler, Jake made a small plan. He would camp there for the night. He didn't want to risk traveling in the dark, and he hoped maybe her family would come searching for her. He gathered some dry branches and made a tiny fire, just enough to warm them when the night breezes came. The girl sat close, her eyes heavy but peaceful. Jake gave her the softest part of his blanket and let her sleep while he kept watch. The stars came out across the sky like scattered diamonds, and for the first time in days, Jake didn't feel completely alone. He looked at the small child resting beside the fire and wondered what her story was, how she had become lost, and who was out there worrying about her. The desert was quiet through the night, but early at dawn, a sharp sound woke Jake from his light sleep. It wasn't loud, but it was clear footsteps in the sand. Many of them. Before he could stand, shadows appeared around him. Tall figures stepped into the early morning light, their faces calm but serious. They wore traditional Apache clothing, decorated with beads and patterns that held meaning Jake didn't know. Some carried staffs, others held simple tools for tracking. They did not look angry, only deeply alert. Jake raised his hands slowly to show he meant no harm, though he wasn't carrying any weapon in his hands anyway. The little girl woke and sat up, looking at the people around them. Instead of fear, her face lit with surprise and relief. One of the Apache men stepped forward and spoke in his language, asking the girl a question. She answered quickly, pointing at Jake, then at the water canteen beside her. The man nodded but kept his eyes on Jake, watching him carefully. Then the crowd parted to make way for a woman. She moved with quiet strength, wearing a cloak decorated with symbols of her tribe. Her face was filled with both worry and authority. The little girl ran to her with a soft cry, and the woman knelt, embracing her tightly. Jake realized she must be the child's mother. The woman studied Jake with calm, steady eyes. They held no anger, but they held a great deal of seriousness. She asked her daughter something, and the girl answered eagerly, pointing again at Jake, then at the food he had given her. The mother stood tall and walked up to Jake. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She simply looked into his face, as if trying to see the kind of man he was. Then she said something in English, her voice firm but thoughtful. "You fed my daughter," she said. "You found her when she was alone." Jake nodded slowly. "She needed help," he said. "Anyone would have done the same." But the woman seemed to think differently. She paused, then spoke the words that would change Jake's journey completely. "You fed my daughter," she repeated. "Now you belong to me." Jake blinked, unsure what she meant. Her tone wasn't harsh. It wasn't even demanding. It sounded more like a statement of tradition, something deep and old. The other Apache people nodded in agreement, as if her words were part of a respected rule. Jake didn't argue. He wasn't sure what being claimed by someone meant, but he sensed it wasn't meant as a threat. The woman gestured for him to follow, and though he felt uncertain, he trusted the kindness he had seen in the child and the calm strength in her mother's eyes. He packed his things slowly and mounted his horse, which the Apache allowed him to keep. The group began walking toward the distant cliffs, the girl riding with her mother, glancing back at Jake every so often with a smile of comfort. Jake took a deep breath, knowing his quiet journey across the desert had taken an unexpected turn. The sun was rising again, painting the sky with soft colors. Jake didn't know what waited for him ahead, what it meant to belong to the Apache woman, or how long he would be with her people. But one thing was clear. The moment he gave water to a lost child, his story had changed. And now his path was tied to theirs in a way he didn't yet understand. Still, he felt no fear. Only curiosity, and a strange sense that maybe he was meant to be exactly where he was going. Jake followed the Apache group deeper into the land where the cliffs rose like giant walls against the sky. The morning sun warmed the trail, and soft shadows flowed beside them as they traveled. Jake rode quietly behind the others, still trying to understand what "you belong to me" meant. He didn't feel like a prisoner, but he also didn't feel free to turn back. The Apache woman walked with calm confidence at the front of the group, and her daughter often looked over her shoulder to make sure Jake was still there. As they approached the hidden settlement, Jake noticed how cleverly the homes were built. They blended with the earth itself, shaped from wood, stone, and woven branches. It was peaceful, almost like the land had grown the homes itself. Children played near the edges of the camp, and elders sat together weaving or preparing food. Everyone turned to look at Jake. Curious, but not unfriendly. The woman led him to a shaded area where a group of elders sat in a circle. She spoke quietly to them in her language, explaining everything. How Jake had found her daughter, given her food and water, stayed with her through the night, and waited for her family. The elders listened carefully, nodding to each part of the story. Then, one of them, an older man with steady eyes and a gentle smile, approached Jake. "You helped a child," the elder said in slow, clear English. "For us, that is a bond." Jake nodded, still unsure. "Her mother told me I belong to her. I don't understand what that means," the elder smiled softly. "It means you are under her protection. You are not here as a prisoner." Her words carry care, not ownership. When someone saves a child, the parent carries a promise. But sometimes, the promise turns into another kind of bond. Jake listened carefully. The elder continued, "You helped her daughter. That makes her responsible for your well-being. And if ever she cannot protect her daughter, you become someone the child can depend on. This is our way." Jake took a breath, letting the meaning settle inside him. It was not a punishment. It was a connection, a joining of paths. He looked at the mother, who watched him with calm eyes, and realized she had been honoring him, not trying to trap him. The girl took his hand gently, as if she already trusted him completely. The elders decided Jake should stay among them for a while. They wanted him to rest, learn their ways, and understand their customs before deciding his next steps. Jake agreed. There was something peaceful about the place, something that made him feel welcome even if it wasn't familiar. Over the next days, Jake found himself learning more than he expected. He helped gather wood with some of the young men, and though he didn't understand everything they said, their friendly gestures made it easy to work with them. He helped repair tools, using his cowboy skills with rope and leather. He showed the children how to brush and calm nervous horses, a task he had always been good at. The children laughed and asked him to show them again and again. Their joy warmed him in a way he hadn't felt in a long time. The Apache woman, whose name was Tazane, often watched Jake from a short distance. She didn't speak much, but her presence was steady. Whenever he looked her way, she would give a small nod, as if to say she approved. Her daughter stayed close to him whenever she could, holding his hand, showing him around the camp, and teaching him small words in her language. One evening, after Jake had spent the day helping to fix a small shelter, the elder who had spoken to him earlier sat beside him near the fire. The air was cool and calm, and the stars above looked like tiny lanterns in the sky. "You have settled in well," the elder said. Jake nodded. "Your people have been kind. I feel useful here." "That is good," the elder replied. "When a man feels useful, he feels alive." They both smiled at the truth of that. After a moment, the elder leaned closer. "Soon, you will have a choice," he said, "to stay or to go. But know this. Whatever you choose, you will always be welcome here." Jake thanked him. The idea of leaving felt strange now. He had grown used to the quiet evenings, the warmth of the fire, the friendly faces, and the trust of the little girl who had once been lost in the desert. One afternoon, while Jake was teaching two young boys how to guide a horse around a small circle, he noticed Tazane approaching. She walked with purpose, her expression serious but not troubled. "Come," she said. "Walk with me." Jake followed her to the top of a small hill where they could see the entire settlement. The wind brushed past them softly. "You have helped my people," she began. "You work with honesty. You are gentle with the children. And my daughter, she smiles because of you." Jake felt a warm tug in his chest at that. "She is a sweet girl," he said. "I'm glad I found her." Tazane looked at him with calm gratitude. "When I said you belonged to me," she said slowly, "it was not to command you. It was to thank you, to honor you, to tell you that your life is tied with ours now, only if you wish it." Jake had spent many years drifting from place to place. He had never belonged anywhere for long. Hearing her say that he had a place if he wanted it filled him with something quiet and deep. But before he could answer, something unexpected happened. A group of riders appeared on the horizon. They were far off but moving steadily toward the settlement. The Apache people gathered, curious but calm. Jake stepped beside Tazane, watching the dust rise behind the approaching horses. The riders slowed as they reached the camp, and Jake recognized the look of travelers who had lost their way. They were tired, dusty, and clearly hoping for directions or water. They greeted the Apache people kindly, asking if they had seen a young girl who had been missing for several days. It seemed that the riders had heard rumors but had grown more and more unsure where to search. Tazane stepped forward and assured them that the girl was with her and safe. The relief on their faces was clear as day. They thanked Jake when they learned he had found her, offering friendly smiles and warm words. For Jake, it was a reminder of how life could bring strangers together in unexpected ways. After giving the riders directions to continue their journey, the Apache returned to their peaceful routine. Jake stood quietly, thinking about everything he had experienced. Later that evening, Tazane approached him again. "You have fulfilled the bond," she said gently. "My daughter is safe because of you. And now you are free to go, if that is what you wish." Jake looked around. At the children playing, at the peaceful homes, at the sky turning soft with sunset colors. He looked at Tazane's daughter, who ran up to him with a smile, holding his hand as if she couldn't imagine him leaving. He realized then that he didn't feel like a stranger anymore. He felt like someone who mattered, someone who had a place. "I think I'll stay a little longer," Jake said with a soft smile. "If your people will have me." Tazane nodded with quiet acceptance. "You will always be welcome here." And so, Jake chose to remain among the Apache for a time. He taught the children how to care for horses, helped repair homes, and learned new ways of living that made his days feel full and meaningful. He had come across the desert searching for peace. And in the most unexpected way, he found it thanks to a lost child, a grateful mother, and a bond formed by kindness. Jake eventually rode away months later, with promises to return. And whenever he looked back on that time, he remembered the words that changed everything. "You fed my daughter. Now you belong to me." Not as a command, but as a connection. A bond of respect, gratitude, and unexpected friendship.